Welcoming you to the Leela podcast, a place where you can discover all things Osho Leela. You'll get to meet the community, learn about community life, and listen in as we share about our upcoming events and workshops from the perspective of the facilitators and the attendees, supporting you to find your way to Leela. Hello and welcome to the Leela podcast. Today we have got a wonderful guest, the lovely Catherine Hale. I'm going to read her bio to you. So Catherine Hale is the visionary behind a transformative approach to coaching and leadership. As a seasoned nervous system coach, educator, and inspiring guide, she doesn't just help her clients navigate change, she empowers them to harness the extraordinary power of post-traumatic growth. Catherine is on a mission to guide those ready for change, seasoned coaches, healers, and leaders to unlock their hidden strengths and align with their deepest purpose and desires through both healing and expanding their capacity, resilience, and potential. But Catherine's work goes beyond personal transformation. She is a fierce advocate for heart-centered entrepreneurs, challenging them to redefine their relationship with receiving more by building a business that's in resonance with their nervous systems and cultivating abundance from a place of authenticity and alignment. In a landscape where trauma is all too common, Catherine is leading the charge for a new approach. She believes that to truly serve others, we must become trauma-informed, learning the language and the skills to create safe, compassionate spaces for healing and growth. It's about building a culture of care and understanding where practitioners and facilitators can meet their clients exactly where they are, fostering lasting and profound transformation. Yay, thank you so much for joining us, Catherine. It's a super pleasure to have you on the podcast and really get to kind of spend a bit more time with you. We've been in the background working together on Emergent Eros. I'm doing the promotional side and the liaison side, and Catherine is the co-creator alongside Gayatri, Beegan, who you might have seen the podcast from last time. And yeah, together they are bringing something new, something different to Osho Leela, which is very, very exciting. So it's a real pleasure to have you here, Catherine.
Thank you so much, Louise. It's a real pleasure to be here, to be having this conversation at a time when the world is needing a different approach to personal development, to personal transformation. The clock is ticking, and we need to be really kind of stepping up our game as facilitators, practitioners, coaches, leaders, so that we can really support the depth of personal transformation and therefore collective transformation that is required at this point within the kind of global history.
Yeah, exactly. So important. And yeah, it was important, for me personally to be kind of like bringing this through for Osho Leela. We obviously have got a big history, and you bring something new and something fresh and something different, and it feels really magical to be a part of it, really. Yeah, and I wondered if you could talk into a bit more about why the need for trauma-informed care in these kind of sexuality spaces.
Sure. I mean, I can share a little bit of like what brought me to this point. So when I first started to explore my sexuality on my own healing journey, I found myself in spaces, in retreats and workshops and festivals, etc., where there would be kind of the emphasis was to kind of jump in at the deep end. And it was kind of like a sink or swim affair. And, at times I sank, at times I swam, and I watched other people having similar experiences around me. And really what I then began to realize was that although these places were like promising transformation, actually there was a lot of re-traumatization happening. And really, you know, what we understand around trauma has only really come into kind of the mainstream of like the healing world for about the last 10 to 12 years. And so prior to that point, we kind of perceived trauma to be like big event trauma. So like you had a car crash or you were the victim of a sexual assault, for example. And we saw those as like, that's where trauma happens. And what we were missing to see is all of the more nuanced places where trauma happens through the social nervous system, through developmental trauma. And when we begin to kind of understand this wider picture of what trauma actually is, then we can begin to see how, in these spaces where we were invited to jump in at the deep end, of course, people were getting re-traumatized because there wasn't a level of consciousness around what care was needed for those environments. And, you know, there were some pretty murky shadow dynamics playing out around facilitators as well. So I, you know, found myself in spaces where the facilitation team, whilst they would be there teaching material around sexuality and transformation, they would also be there getting their own sexual needs met within the space. So there'd be a lot of engagement between facilitators and participants. And what wasn't really clear in those times was just the impact of the power dynamic that was at play. It was almost like, we want sexual liberation, therefore sexual liberation looks like we can engage with whoever we want. And what that didn't really take into any account was, you know, the inherent power dynamics that are in play between facilitators and participants. And there were just like many examples of these kind of situations playing out within sexuality spaces. You know, another would be where people were invited, I say that in inverted commas, into experiences. But actually, the invitation wasn't clear. The invitation had an agenda behind it. And often the agenda was, you know, unless you do this thing that you're being invited to do, then you're not going to kind of fit in. And you're not going to belong. And you're not going to belong to the tribe. And, you know, inherent within our system is a need to belong. And so I often saw people kind of doing things in these sexuality spaces that they later regretted. And they'd done it because they wanted to be part of something, to be included, to have this sense of belonging. So again, you know, what was missing was a deeper understanding of all the dynamics that play out within these group spaces, and how when these group spaces are around the theme of sexuality, then it becomes even more of an issue because things become so much more heightened. So the need to belong becomes even more heightened in those spaces. And so whilst there was teaching around boundaries and consent, in many situations, I felt like it was lip service to, it's like, we have to kind of teach boundaries and consent, but there wasn't an integration of it in what came next. There wasn't a follow through in what came next in the teaching and in the way that people were showing up in the spaces. So there was a lot of overriding that was happening for people, going along with, because that's the culture that we're in. So in seeing all of this playing out over probably like a decade, in many different kind of sexuality spaces, and I began to kind of like piece together all of the elements, and I'm not the only person who's been doing this, you know, there've been many people who've been having these conversations. I began to see like, well, what are the missing pieces that we need to bring into these spaces to ensure that, one, they're trauma informed, and I'll talk about what that means in a moment, but that the people who are coming are actually having the experiences that they need to transform, and not experiences that blow them so far apart from themselves, expand them so much that they can't integrate that experience. And it becomes yet another undigested experience that sits in the nervous system and actually creates another level of trauma.
Yeah, and I mean, for me, these are not spaces I've been in. I'm very new to the kind of sexuality spaces, and um you know, my reference is doing a beautiful workshop with Edric last year, and really kind of like, wow, and that wasn't even kind of sexuality really, you know. And yeah, just really beautiful experiences. So to have that experience and to then change it, and like to see where things need to improve, it's just beautiful that you're doing this work. And yeah, I guess could you talk more into the changes you mentioned
Yeah,
about the trauma
sure.
informed piece? So,
Yeah, I mean, so on my own personal journey, when I started to see that things were off, right? When I started to see that predatory behavior was just commonplace, that people were like checking out and dissociating in group spaces, or when they were kind of moving into connecting with emotions, they were going into such strong cathartic experiences that I would literally watch them cycle round and round and round, but nothing would actually change for those people. And so I decided to go and get trauma trained. And I went off and did several trainings, qualified as a trauma resolution coach back in 2020. And prior to that, I did a couple of other trauma trainings. And I just began to see the mismatch between what was happening in sexuality spaces and what I now knew was needed. And, you know, trauma happens usually because things are too fast for us to be able to integrate them, to be able to stay embodied in the experience. They happen too soon. They are like they're too much for our system. And so this is what was happening in these sexuality spaces. These experiences are just like way too big for the nervous systems to be able to integrate them. And so like I began to see that what we actually needed to do was to slow down so we could stay present enough with our experiences and stay present with our body. We needed to have choice available, like informed choice. So it's like, this is what's going to happen next. Now you can tune in and see if that's the next step that you want to take. We needed to have like a deeper embodiment of boundaries and consent. People need to know that they still get to belong, even if they don't include themselves in everything that happens. And then we just needed like a whole new code of like professional ethics and integrity around how do facilitators and assistants show up in these spaces, and what's their responsibility given that there's an inherent power dynamic at play. And then, you know, how do we communicate all of this to the people that we're working with? And so I've been teaching practitioners to become trauma informed since I qualified in 2020. And I've kind of like upped my game and upped my game and upped my game. And, you know, I'm kind of teaching the trauma informed element on the field facilitation training this year, and we'll be doing so next year as well. And, you know, essentially I've made a 100-hour, it's probably a 200-hour training, teaching people who want to be facilitators and all of the elements that are actually needed to show up with those skills in that space. And so I wanted to bring all of that into a retreat offering at Osho Leela. And I knew that Gayatri would be on the same page as me. And so we've been collaborating, and it's been a really joyful collaboration. And it's really like, this is how we do it differently. And, you know, we've been talking about these are the differences that make the difference. And I'll share some examples of what we've been doing. So, you know, we've created a code of engagement, and we've shared that with all the people who are wanting to come to the retreat. And it's like, this is how we're all going to show up in this space. This is the level of support that's going to be available to you. This is how you access the support in this space. We are going to cultivate an attitude of tolerance and acceptance and curiosity towards each other, etc., etc. It's like a 2-page document that we've created. And the feedback that we've had from people so far is, thank you so much for doing this. Because it's really showing that you've thought about all the things that have been potential triggers or re-traumatization possibilities that these people have had in retreats that they've been to previously. And so we've kind of thought about all of those things. We've got a code of conduct for the facilitation team and for the care team. And, you know, it's very clear about, we're not going to be engaging with participants. We're here in service to them, not we're here in service to getting our needs met. So it's a subtle shift, but it's a very different direction to be moving in. In this retreat, we've created an application process, and it's my job to vet all of the applications. And if there's anyone who I think isn't resourced enough or doesn't have enough background experience, then I'll invite them in for an interview to ensure that they really are a right fit for this experience. So it's not to exclude people, but it's to ensure that it's going to be safe for them. And if there's anyone who I've had to say no to, which I've had to say no to a few people, I've directed them to other offerings that would be more suitable for them. We have a team of facilitators who are trauma informed, and really the essence of this experience is we're going to go slow. So there's no deep end to jump into. We're all in the shallow waters together. And we're all going to kind of learn the embodied skills around boundaries and consent, nervous system regulation, so that we've got the tools to be able to navigate the complexity that comes up around intimacy, eros, and sexuality. There's a lot of option for people to sit out, to rest. There's integration time built into the experience so that people can, you know, really take the time to digest their experience rather than, oh, I'll just move on to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing, and just kind of blowing a gasket and leaving the event feeling fried, or leaving the event feeling so kind of stretched that then the natural momentum would be to come back into a contracted state afterwards. And so there's like a gentle flow and a gentle rhythm to the days that we've created. Now, what's really interesting is that when we equip people with all of those skills and we create the container that's really, really clear, then people have a much deeper experience, right? So it's not like, oh, it's going to be kind of wishy-washy. It's actually going to be far deeper than these experiences where you were pushed in at the deep end and kind of drowned for a bit, and maybe you survived or maybe you didn't. And that's what we really want to bring across, is that we are not micromanaging the experience for people. We're actually tailoring it so that the transformation that they're looking for is actually possible for them at their level of personal development. And by that, I mean a number of different things, but particularly like their relationship to their nervous system. And so a nervous system has a capacity for experience, for new experience. And what we want people to learn to discern during the retreat is their particular unique capacity, and not to be overriding that because someone over there looks like they're having a different experience to you, but actually really getting clear about what's right size for me, what's going to be the next bite-sized step for me in my personal transformation journey. So it's kind of really supporting participants at the retreat to have a deeper relationship with themselves. So they know when, like, that's enough, or that's a no, or that's a yes. And when we have that as an innate kind of embodiment, then not only does that support us in the realm of sexuality, but it supports us through the whole of our life. We get to move towards or away from things that are most aligned for us.
Beautiful. Beautiful. I think the word that always comes up for me when like listening to you talking is like, from my own experience, is like when it's the fawning thing, you know, because I'm a fawner for sure, people pleaser, and that has been along my path. And it just sounds beautiful that you're holding the space, you're creating such an integral kind of container. And then in that moment, how do you know when it's like really a yes or whether you're in that fawning? That's the question that's just come up for me.
Yeah, great question. You know, so fawning is a social nervous system response, which many of us have learnt to do in order to stay safe. So it could be in an example of saying yes to an interaction with somebody because we don't want to say no, because we don't want to hurt the feelings of the other person, because we want to maintain relationship with the other person. And that's what will create safety for us. And so we kind of override a voice that's really saying to us, actually, no, I don't want to do this practice with this person. We learn to override that voice, and by doing so, we fail to meet our own needs and we cross our own boundary. And so what we're inviting on this retreat, people are going to do that. People are going to fawn. It's inevitable, right? But what we want people to begin to start to notice is when they're doing it, what it actually feels like. And you know, we build in like enough reflection time into the experiences for there to be like, do you know what? That didn't actually feel 100% right for me. And I know that because I'm feeling this contraction in my belly as I go into the integration part of this experience. Or I noticed that my voice sped up, or I noticed that I started to go faster, or I noticed that I started to check out. And when we start with like really small experiences around intimacy and sexuality, we can begin to start to see these patterns before we're in a really big experience. And then we can begin to start retraining ourselves to find safety in a different way. And ultimately, where we find that safety is by honoring the needs that we have within our system and beginning to put boundaries in place around them. Knowing that if it means losing a relationship, it was never a right relationship in the first place.
Yeah. Resonates.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. Yeah, because I'm kind of thinking as well about the people that may be attracted to come to the group, and you've already answered, you know, my always this question of like, if it's so safe, how is it going to be fun? You know,
Yeah.
how is that going to come through? And you kind of you explain that super well, you know, of like, once we have that, you know, that sense of safety and the holding and everything that you've taught through, you can go to those places. And I'm just interested in like, yeah, who is it that's interested in these, or who would really benefit from coming to this kind of retreat?
Yeah, so kind of like the ideal fit for this retreat.
Mm.
So like, of all the people who've signed up so far, they, you know, that we've said yes to, they're all an ideal fit. And, you know, it's a really kind of high quality group of people that have started to come together. So, you know, there are people who have a range of experience within the sexuality spaces. Not everybody has done a lot of work in that space, but everyone who is coming has enough of the tools, the personal development tools, the self-reflection tools, the resourcing tools, to be able to begin to navigate in those spaces. So we'll have people kind of coming in at different depths, which is great because we want range within the space. But everyone's able to be self-responsible. Everyone can hold themselves. Everyone knows that there's support there and can reach out for that support. Everyone's really willing to kind of meet themselves with a level of curiosity and kindness and compassion with their experience, and to extend that out into the group field. So, you know, it's not for people who are just looking to come and have a sexual experience, right? There are other spaces for that, and, you know, I'm not against that at all, you know. So healthy expression, but that's not what this space is for. This space is for people who have a genuine curiosity and excitement about exploring these edges within themselves, and getting kind of taking the brave steps towards becoming more authentic in their expression of intimacy and sexuality and their erotic nature.
Yeah.
And just to say, actually, it's a range of ages as well.
So
we've got people from you know, in their 20s right up into their 70s. So it's a really welcoming space of all ages, of all genders, of people with neurodivergence, of people with disability, you know, physical mobility challenges. It's a very inclusive space. So, you know, if someone's thinking, if someone's listening and thinking, oh, well, I wouldn't be welcome there because I've got, you know, a challenge, no, you are welcome. And we will do everything to support, to accommodate your needs within that space as best as we can.
Beautiful, beautiful. That makes me feel really, good inside. I really appreciate, you know, especially diversity in age is so lovely. It's so lovely to be able to experience with different people, different ages, and so on. Okay. I've got care team kind of coming through, and you've touched on it a little bit, and I'm just kind of wondering a little bit about what that looks like.
Sure.
For people in that experience.
Yeah, so we've got a team of facilitators who will be offering experiences throughout the retreat. Excuse me. And then we've got a group of 10 people who are seasoned sexuality, either kind of coaches, body workers, or who've done a lot of their own personal development work around sexuality. And they're there as a point of contact to offer support and care. So they'll be there within the workshop spaces. So you can reach out and go, oh, you know, I'm having a hard time. Can you help me? And they're also available outside of workshop spaces, I think from like 8 o'clock in the evening until 10 o'clock at night. And you can go and reach out to these people and ask for some level of support from them. So essentially the structure is there's Gayatri and I who are leading it. Next is the facilitation team. Next is the care team. And then next is that we've created pods, And a pod is going to be a group of participants who meet on a daily basis, and you essentially are a little family together, and they're your point of contact every single day, and they act as a place of continuity for you throughout the retreat. So you take things to your pod, you take things to the care team primarily, and then if more support is needed, then other people can be brought in.
Beautiful. I also kind of have this question of like, because I noticed through obviously doing the promotions and stuff and speaking to you that the emphasis is on all of the care, which is really beautiful, and less so about like what you're going to be doing. However, I'm just also curious about when it comes to the things that people might experience what kind of things can they expect?
Yeah, I mean, we do have a plan. However, the retreat is called Emergent Eros. And so the plan is subject to change depending on what's happening within the group. And I'm not trying to give you one of those like politician vague answers. But essentially, we're going to take you on a journey of like, day one is like landing, arriving, boundaries, consent, embodiment. Right. So we're all on the same page together. We all understand what that means and how we're going to use that to relate with each other over the course of the retreat. And each day has a different theme, a different elemental theme. And the workshops are going to relate to that theme. And so, the journey each day is that we come together in the morning. You're in your pod. We're there as a whole group, and then there'll be a morning workshop. And unlike other festivals which have happened at Osho Leela, there isn't going to be like a choice of 3 things to go to. It's like we're all moving together as one single cohort. So there'll be a workshop to go to. There'll be one in the afternoon. There'll be one in the evening, and then there'll be a kind of spaces in the evening to gather together. And we'll be starting really slowly, as I've said. So setting the tempo really, really slow, inviting you into, like I'm offering in one of the first workshops, a belly to belly practice. And, if people don't know the belly to belly practice, it's a partnered breathing meditation practice that really down regulates the nervous system, really creates a level of safety and relaxation before we move into getting closer to another body. It's a fully clothed experience. It's not a sexual erotic experience. It's an intimacy experience. And, this is one of these beautiful ways in which we can build connection with the community. We can build trust. We can begin to or develop our skills that discern how close we want to be with this person. Do we want a full embrace with them? Do we want to hold hands with them? Do we just want to lie there and eye gaze with them? There are all these options for engagement with each other, and we allow the body to support us to discern how we want to come into relationship. We do have what we call a temple offering every evening, early evening, and the themes will be very different from one evening to the next. And this is a kind of deeper held space to explore themes that come up around Eros and sexuality. And we also have a late evening space, like 10 o'clock onwards, which is called the Garden of Earthly Delights, which is it's a held space, but it's not a directed space. So you can go there with somebody or a group of people and explore touch, connection, Eros, sexuality, within the bounds of that space.
Beautiful. Sounds lovely. I'm noticing that the time is getting on, and I'm just wondering, just to kind of I guess, finish up, is there anything else that you'd want to bring in? Is there any?
Mm. I mean, I guess if you're somebody who knows you want to do some work around your sexuality, but you've never felt like that the spaces that you've seen out there are safe enough for you to do that, then this is an opportunity to experience a place that is really devoted to creating safety and care that enables the depth of transformation that you're looking for. So anyone that's like on the fence, it's like, you know, if you feel to, step off the fence and come and join us. There was one other thing I was going to say, and it's slipped my menopausal brain. It was about inclusion. Yes, people often ask, is there a gender balance in these spaces? And there is. So we balance it out based on the type of body that people have. So whether they're male-bodied people or female-bodied people, we create a 50-50 balance between those two groups, so that it feels I guess the word is balance. Like there's a balance. There's not a predominance of one gender within the space.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Catherine.
Mm.
So we're filming this at the beginning of July, and I know we're already 2/3 full.
Over 2/3 full.
Over 2/3 full. So yeah, I guess by the time this goes out, it'll be another week. So it really is about kind of feeling into, wow, is this something I want to experience? You know, if you've resonated listening to this discussion, if you've checked out the discussion with Gayatri, and yeah, just even putting in that first, you know, the application form, I guess, just to kind of go, wow, okay, is this for me?
Yeah.
Just take a look at it.
Yeah.
Just really encouraging, if this does sound like an experience that you'd like to go through with Catherine and Gayatri, to take that step, I guess.
Yeah. And you know, it's like we expect this retreat to be sold out. So if you're like, yeah, I think I want to come, then don't wait too long, because then you'll be disappointed. And once the tickets are gone, the tickets are gone. We do have a limit on numbers.
Yeah, totally. So thank you so much for joining me today, Catherine, on the Leela podcast. It's been a super pleasure. I feel more informed. I feel more curious. And yeah, looking forward to continuing the process of this coming through, and yeah, what fruits come from it as well. So yeah, thank you so much. And yeah, just if you could also just let the audience know where to find out a bit more about you. We'll obviously put everything in the show notes.
Sure.
Yeah, as well.
Yeah, you can find me on my website, or come and find me on my Facebook page. I go to Instagram. I'm not so active on there. Facebook is really my platform. So and come and join my newsletter, and where you'll receive weekly words of wisdom from me around all aspects related to healing the nervous system.
Thank you so much, Catherine.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.